The sharp click of the receiver echoed the hollow space Serena's words carved into Alara's chest. It's family only, Alara. You know, close family. The familiar ache bloomed, a poisonous flower fed by years of being the afterthought, the invisible sister. But this time, beneath the old pain, a quiet, cold tremor began to stir, a promise of something irrevocably broken, or perhaps finally forged. The phone buzzed, a jarring intrusion into Alara's quiet Tuesday evening, already heavy with the lingering scent of grading papers and the muted hum of her empty apartment. It was Serena, her sister, a name that usually brought a mix of apprehension and a faint, desperate hope for connection. Tonight, it brought only the former. Alara? It's Serena. The voice, crisp and impeccably modulated, offered no warmth, only a practiced formality. Look, I'm calling about the wedding. Liam and I have decided to keep it incredibly small, really just immediate family. And, well, we've made the difficult decision that it's truly just our parents and his closest relatives. So, you won't be attending. Her mind reeled through a lifetime of Serena's exclusive events, birthday parties where Alara was relegated to a side table, family vacations where her opinion was unheard, achievements that garnered a lukewarm nod while Serena's smallest victories were met with fanfare. Alara, the quiet, conscientious schoolteacher, had always striven for recognition, for a fraction of the adoration Serena effortlessly commanded. She had nurtured a quiet hope, a naive belief that someday Serena would truly see her, truly want her near. That this wedding, this milestone, might be a bridge. How foolish. I understand, Alara lied, the words tasting like ash. What she understood was the brutal clarity of her lifelong role, the outsider looking in, forever yearning for a place at a table that was never set for her. Good. Glad we cleared that up, Serena chirped, her tone brightening, as if Alara's acquiescence was a minor inconvenience, finally resolved. Well, gotta go. So much to plan. Talk later. She hung up before Alara could utter another word. The silence that followed was deafening, a vast, echoing void where her sister's dismissive voice had been. Alara stared at her phone, a heavy, inert slab in her hand, feeling utterly hollowed out. She wasn't just sad, she was profoundly, existentially erased. 10 minutes later, the phone rang again. It was Eleanor, their mother. Alara braced herself, her heart thrumming a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Alara, darling, Serena just called me. She's terribly upset. Said you made a bit of a fuss about the wedding. Eleanor's voice was laced with that familiar, saccharine disappointment, a weapon honed over decades. You know how sensitive Serena is about these things. It's her big day, dear. You really must try to understand. Alara, that's unfair. Of course, your feelings matter, but you can't expect everything to revolve around you. We have to support Serena. She needs us. And frankly, this kind of negativity is not what she needs right now. Eleanor sighed, a theatrical exhalation that conveyed profound weariness. Just be happy for your sister, darling. That's what family does. The call ended much like Serena's, with Eleanor offering a hasty goodbye and a brittle injunction to try and be happy. Alara slowly lowered the phone, her hand shaking. The dismissive pity, the insistence on her understanding, the blatant favoritism, it was a familiar dance, one she had performed countless times. But this time, something shifted. The pain was there, immense and suffocating, but beneath it, a cold, hard ember began to glow. It wasn't sadness anymore. It was an anger, deep and elemental, that had been simmering for years. Minutes later, a text popped up from Chloe, her best friend. Asterisk, are you okay? Serena's such a cow. Heard about the wedding. My blood is boiling for you, Alara. Asterisk. A small, choked laugh escaped Alara's lips. At least someone saw it. At least someone validated the righteous fury bubbling beneath her tears. The old Alara would have swallowed the pain, tried to understand, faded back into the background. But as she reread Chloe's fierce words, a strange, defiant resolve began to solidify. This time, understanding wouldn't be enough. This time, Alara wasn't going to disappear. Alara's fingers traced the cool ceramic of her mug, the coffee long forgotten. Chloe's words, sharp and unequivocal, echoed in the silent apartment. "You are not a doormat, Alara." The defiant resolve that had stirred earlier now hummed beneath her skin, an unfamiliar, brittle energy replacing the familiar ache of rejection. For years, she had perfected the art of understanding, of rationalizing, of quietly receding into the background when Serena shone too brightly. But this time, the wound felt different, festering with an insult too profound to simply absorb. Compulsively, her phone found its way back into her hand. She scrolled through Serena's social media feeds, a masochistic ritual she couldn't resist. There they were, the glossy, aspirational posts, engagement photos, a countdown to our intimate, family-only island ceremony, replete with hashtags like #Serena's Fairy Tale and #Exclusive Bliss. A bitter laugh escaped Alara's lips. Intimate. Family only. Right. Then, a new post from Serena's wedding planner flashed across her screen, a sneak peek of the guest list graphic, artfully blurred, but undeniably showing row after row of names. Alara zoomed in, her breath catching in her throat. Names she didn't recognize, acquaintances from Serena's old sorority chapter who lived 3 states away, even a distant cousin Alara hadn't seen since childhood and who Serena openly disliked. 50 guests, Serena had said. 50 chosen guests. Yet Alara, her own sister, was deemed less worthy than a glorified stranger. The familiar knot of sadness in Alara's stomach didn't just tighten, it combusted. A fierce, white-hot anger surged through her veins, a torrent washing away years of quiet hurt and polite understanding. This wasn't merely exclusion, it was a deliberate, public erasure, carefully orchestrated to underscore her insignificance. Every polite nod, every forced smile, every time she'd said, "It's okay, I understand," had chipped away not at Serena, but at herself. Her understanding wasn't a virtue, it was a flaw, a gaping vulnerability her family had exploited with chilling efficiency. No more. The word resonated in her mind like a gavel striking. No more disappearing. No more accepting her designated role as the invisible sister. If Serena craved exclusivity and public validation, Alara would give her a taste of her own medicine. A more potent, more dazzling medicine. An idea, audacious and utterly reckless, bloomed in the fertile ground of her fury. Serena's wedding was set for the last Saturday in August. What if Alara hosted her own event that day? Not a pity party, not a quiet dinner with Chloe, but something grand, something unforgettable. Something that screamed, "I am here, and I matter." Her gaze drifted to the framed photo on her desk, a postcard from a dream vacation, a sleek yacht gliding across turquoise waters. A yacht party. The absurdity of it made her almost laugh. Her entire life savings, meticulously hoarded from her meager teacher's salary, was earmarked for a down payment on a small condo, for a future of quiet stability. But what was stability if she remained invisible? The thought terrified her, yet a thrilling surge of adrenaline coursed through her. This wasn't about revenge, it was about self-preservation, about reclaiming her narrative. It was about proving to herself, more than anyone else, that she deserved to be celebrated. Serena wanted a small, intimate wedding? Fine. Alara would host a lavish, spectacular celebration of her own life. On the exact same day. She would invite everyone Serena hadn't, everyone Serena had, everyone who would choose genuine joy over curated exclusivity. She picked up her phone again, but this time, not to scroll through Serena's curated life. This time, she opened a browser, her fingers flying across the screen. Luxury yacht rentals. August 26th. The decision was made. Irreversible. Reckless. And for the first time in a very long time, Alara felt terrifyingly, exhilaratingly alive. This was her line in the sand, drawn with the last drops of her understanding and the first sparks of a rebellion she didn't know she was capable of. The terrifying exhilaration Alara felt after making her decision solidified into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. That initial, desperate spark of rebellion, born from years of being overlooked, now fueled a meticulous, almost obsessive planning phase. Her line in the sand wasn't just drawn, it was being paved with glittering intentions. She spent every evening, after long days of teaching, poring over brochures and websites, her laptop glowing a defiant beacon in her small, quiet apartment. The goal was clear, not just a party, but an experience. An event so undeniably captivating, so effortlessly chic, that it would not merely compete with Serena's intimate island wedding, but eclipse it entirely. Ilara wasn't aiming for parody, she was aiming for dominance, a grand, public declaration of her own worth, finally asserted. Her savings, once earmarked for a down payment on a modest little house, became the war chest for this audacious campaign. She found a private charter company boasting a sleek, multi-deck yacht, not the largest, but one with an undeniable air of sophisticated luxury, replete with a gourmet kitchen, an open-air dance floor, and panoramic views of the city skyline at sunset. It wasn't her in the old sense, but it was her now, the woman who refused to be invisible. Each booking, each deposit, felt like a small act of defiance, a brick laid in the foundation of her new, self-made empire. The invitations were a critical weapon in her arsenal. Rejecting traditional paper, Ilara commissioned bespoke digital invitations, a short, elegant video clip showcasing the yacht gliding across sapphire waters, a promise of live jazz, a Michelin star caterer, and a tantalizingly vague dress code implying Riviera chic. The date was boldly emblazoned, 3 words beneath it: an unforgettable evening. There was no mention of wedding, no overt competition, just an undeniable allure. It whispered of exclusivity, adventure, and a celebration of life that felt far more vibrant than a ceremony in a remote, over-curated resort. It was a subtle, yet potent, jab at Serena's intimate affair, which, Ilara had discovered through careful social media stalking, had bloated into a 50-person affair anyway, yet still somehow managed to exclude her. The guest list was where Ilara truly leaned into the audacious gamble. She leveraged old Facebook groups, LinkedIn connections, and the few mutual friends she still tenuously shared with Serena. College acquaintances, former colleagues from shared internships, distant cousins. Even some of Serena's professional contacts she'd met at family gatherings years ago. Anyone who might feel even a flicker of obligation or curiosity towards Serena's wedding was fair game. Ilara knew the unspoken calculus. Attending her yacht party meant not attending Serena's wedding. She wasn't just inviting them, she was offering them a choice, a clear alternative. And she made sure her invitations dropped exactly 2 weeks before Serena's, designed to intercept and override any lingering loyalty. The first RSVP notification sent a jolt through her, a mix of terror and triumph. Then another. And another. Each chime of her phone felt like a tiny hammer striking a bell, announcing her arrival. Her former English lit professor, who always favored Serena's sparkle, confirmed. A cluster of Serena's old sorority sisters, whom Ilara had always felt judged by, were delighted to accept. Even a few of the more distant, but well-connected, family members who typically orbited Serena's privileged sphere chose her. The validation was intoxicating. It wasn't just about the party anymore, it was about people choosing her. Choosing her vibrant, audacious unknown over Serena's predictable, perfectly curated known. It was proof that her quiet presence, so long ignored, could, in fact, command attention, loyalty, and even excitement. The anger that had simmered for so long began to transform into a fierce confidence, a belief that she was not just reacting, but creating. Creating something magnificent, and in doing so, creating a new version of herself. The invitations continued to pour in, a wave of acceptance washing over years of rejection, building towards a grand reveal that would leave no doubt. Ilara was no longer waiting to be invited, she was hosting. And the guest list for her own life was growing, filled with people who were truly eager to celebrate with her. 3 weeks before Serena's meticulously planned, intimate island wedding, the first crack in her carefully constructed facade appeared. Ilara's phone buzzed with an incoming call from her sister, the caller ID flashing Serena. Alara felt a familiar knot tighten in her stomach, but this time it was laced with a strange, nascent defiance. She answered, "What in God's name do you think you're doing, Alara?" Serena's voice, usually a carefully modulated instrument of control, was sharp, frayed at the edges with a barely contained fury. "My RSVPs are a disaster. Half my guest list is pulling out. Regrettably unable to attend due to a prior engagement? What prior engagement could possibly be more important than my wedding?" Alara leaned back in her chair, a serene calm settling over her that felt foreign, yet deeply satisfying. "Perhaps they're just busy, Serena. People have lives. Don't play coy with me." Serena's voice escalated, thin and reedy with indignation. "I know about your little yacht party. The invitations are practically mocking mine. Who do you think you are, trying to upstage me on my wedding day?" The accusation hung in the air, thick with her accustomed entitlement. Alara paused, letting the silence stretch, a tactic Serena herself often employed to assert dominance. "Upstage you." Alara's voice was cool, a stark contrast to her sister's hysteria. "Serena, when you explicitly told me I wasn't close enough to be part of your intimate ceremony, you effectively drew a line. You declared that my place wasn't within your inner circle, wasn't family enough. I merely took your words to heart." A sharp intake of breath on Serena's end. "That's completely different. That was about intimacy, family dynamics. Was it?" Alara challenged, her voice gaining a quiet power. "Or was it about choosing who matters to you and who doesn't? You made your choice very clear. So I made mine. I'm celebrating my life with people who genuinely want to be there. I'm not upstaging you, I'm simply existing outside the shadow you've always insisted on casting. You set the precedent, Serena. You taught me what family truly means to you and what it doesn't." The line went dead. Serena, for perhaps the first time, had been rendered speechless, her carefully constructed narrative of victimhood crumbling under the weight of Alara's calm, undeniable truth. Alara felt a surge of exhilaration, swiftly followed by a familiar, yet muted, pang of sadness. This was a bridge burned, definitively. Mere minutes later, her phone rang again. This time, it was Eleanor, their mother. Her voice, however, was not filled with Serena's raw anger, but a practiced, subtly manipulative disappointment. "Alara, darling, what is this I'm hearing about your party?" Eleanor's tone was hushed, as if discussing a grave illness. "Serena is absolutely distraught. Canceling a wedding is such bad form, and to be so openly competitive. It's not like you, sweetie. You're usually so understanding." Alara closed her eyes, picturing her mother's strained smile, the one she used when trying to smooth over unpleasantness without ever addressing the root cause. "Mother, there's nothing competitive about it. Serena told me I wasn't welcome at her wedding, so I planned something for myself. Is that so terrible? But to do it on the same day? It looks so petty, Alara. Like you're trying to sabotage her. Your sister's big day after all her hard work." "Her hard work?" Alara's voice hardened, her composure unwavering. "What about my hard work, Mother? Years of trying to be seen, to be valued, to be enough for you and Dad? Years of watching Serena get every ounce of your attention, your pride, your unwavering support, while I was told to be less dramatic, more understanding, not to make a fuss." The words, long suppressed, flowed out with a chilling clarity. "Do you remember when I got into that prestigious art program? Or when I won the district teaching award? The response was always a dismissive 'that's nice, dear,' before you launched back into Serena's latest triumph." Eleanor stammered, caught off guard. "Alara, that's not fair. We love you both equally. Do you?" Alara challenged, her voice unwavering. "Or do you just love the idea of a perfect family, where Serena shines and I conveniently fade into the background? You and Serena didn't just break the family bond, Mother. You shredded it years ago, piece by painful piece, with every slight, every exclusion, every time you chose her over me. I'm not sabotaging Serena's wedding. I'm acknowledging the truth you all created, that I don't belong in your family picture. My party isn't an act of revenge, it's an act of self-preservation. It's me finally saying I exist, and I deserve to be celebrated, even if it's not by you." There was a stunned silence from Eleanor, a rare moment of speechlessness from the woman who always had a comforting, yet deflecting, word. So, Ilara concluded, her voice calm but resolute. Please extend my best wishes to Serena. I hope she has the intimate wedding she always dreamed of. Just without me. She hung up the phone before Eleanor could formulate a reply, the click of the disconnect echoing the definitive break she had just orchestrated. A profound stillness settled over Ilara. There was no overwhelming joy, no wild triumph. Only a quiet sense of release, tinged with the cold, undeniable finality of a battle won, but a family lost. She had finally freed herself, but the cost, she knew, was absolute. The day dawned crisp and clear, a perverse mockery of the storm Ilara felt brewing within her. It was the day. The day of reckoning, the day Serena's meticulously planned, exclusive island wedding was meant to solidify her perfect life, and the day Ilara's own audacious rebellion would either soar or spectacularly crush. She stood before the mirror, unrecognizable. Gone was the perpetually overlooked schoolteacher, the woman who wore comfortable clothes and a shield of quiet resignation. In her place was a vision of radiant confidence, a shimmering emerald gown clinging to curves she hadn't realized she possessed, her hair swept up in an elegant cascade, eyes alight with a fire that had been smoldering for decades. This wasn't just a dress, it was armor, a declaration. As the sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and violet, the magnificent yacht, the uninvited tide, glittered under a canopy of fairy lights. Guests began to arrive, a vibrant stream of faces, many of whom Ilara recognized from Serena's carefully curated social media, some even extended family members who had once whispered condolences about poor Ilara. Now, they offered effusive compliments, their eyes wide with admiration for the lavish spread, the live jazz band, the champagne flowing freely from crystal flutes. Ilara, host extraordinaire, moved through the crowd with an ease that surprised even herself. She smiled, she laughed, she engaged in genuine conversations, feeling seen, truly seen, for the first time in her life. Chloe, her best friend, toasted her, tears in her eyes. You did it, Ilara. You actually did it. The yacht thrummed with a joyous energy, a living, breathing testament to Ilara's newfound power and the magnetic pull of a woman finally claiming her own narrative. Midway through the evening, as the yacht glided effortlessly through the moonlit waters, a notification buzzed on Ilara's phone. It was an anonymous message, a series of photos, and a short, clipped video. Her heart caught in her throat. She retreated to a quiet corner, her hands trembling as she opened them. The first photo showed Serena, in her exquisite wedding gown, standing at the altar. But the pews behind her were painfully sparse. Empty chairs stretched into the distance, a haunting visual of absence. The second was a close-up of Serena's face, a rictus of a smile plastered on, eyes hollow, betraying a deep, raw devastation that even her perfectionist facade couldn't entirely conceal. Another photo depicted Eleanor, their mother, trying to force cheer, her own strained smile a mirror of Serena's desperation. The video, brief and shaky, captured the awkward silence between speeches, the forced laughter, the palpable sense of a grand event that had fallen flat. It was a funeral for a wedding, a public unraveling of Serena's meticulously constructed illusion. A wave of something akin to triumph washed over Ilara, sharp and exhilarating. This was it. The visual evidence of her victory, the shattering of Serena's perfect world. The golden child had been dethroned, her carefully cultivated image of popularity and success exposed as a fragile construct. It was undeniably satisfying, a deep, primal vindication for years of neglect, exclusion, and dismissive pity. But as the initial rush subsided, a hollow ache began to spread through her chest. The vibrant music from the party, the genuine laughter of her guests, seemed to fade into a distant hum. She looked at Serena's devastated eyes in the photo and saw not just a tormentor, but a sister broken. The cost. The cold, final cost of her vindication. There was no family left. The ties were severed, not just with Serena, but with Eleanor too, a mother who had chosen sides, who had prioritized image over her child's suffering. Alara knew, with absolute certainty, that she wouldn't trade this night, this newfound self, for anything. The yacht party was a magnificent, audacious declaration of her existence. It was the moment she stopped waiting to be invited and built her own damn boat. But the bittersweet realization settled over her like a shroud. She had gained herself, but lost a family she had, despite everything, desperately longed to be a part of. The victory was hers, unequivocal and glorious, yet it carried the quiet weight of a devastating, irrecoverable loss. Still, as she took a deep breath and rejoined her guests, a renewed sense of purpose hardened her resolve. The journey had been painful, but she had finally arrived. She mattered. And that, she affirmed, was worth every single casualty. The aftermath descended like a chill fog, not with a bang, but with a calculated silence. Eleanor's calls ceased entirely, replaced by a single, curt email from her father, stating that while they regretted Alara's choices, they stood by Serena, who was deeply hurt. There was no room for discussion, no empathy for Alara's years of pain, only an unwavering loyalty to their golden child and the maintenance of their carefully constructed facade. The sting was sharper than any previous rejection because now Alara expected it. The finality of their dismissal, however, brought a peculiar sense of liberation. The invisible thread that had tethered her to their approval, however frayed, was now definitively severed. Initial guilt, a familiar phantom, ghosted through her days. Had she gone too far? Was a family truly worth sacrificing for a moment of vindication? Chloe, ever her unwavering anchor, dispelled the doubts. They made their bed, Alara. You just chose not to sleep in it anymore. Her Aunt Margaret, a quiet observer of their family's long-standing dysfunction, offered solace not through words of blame, but through quiet understanding. Sometimes, Margaret had said gently during a long phone call, leaving is the only way to find your own way home. Their validation, simple and pure, was a balm Alara hadn't known she desperately needed. The decision to leave the city where every street held a memory, good or bad, was swift and decisive. Austin, Texas, a vibrant city brimming with innovation and a welcoming spirit, beckoned. It was a conscious break, a geographical and emotional reset. She found a new teaching position at a progressive school, where her quiet dedication was recognized and celebrated. She enrolled in evening art classes, rekindling a passion long suppressed by familial anxieties. The art was messy, vibrant, and utterly her own. No perfection demanded, only expression. Austin quickly became home. She forged new friendships, genuine connections built on shared interests and mutual respect, unburdened by the convoluted history of her past. There was no need to perform, no need to shrink herself to fit into predetermined roles. She hiked the greenbelts, discovered hidden music venues, and for the first time, simply was. The quiet hum of contentment replaced the constant ache of yearning. One crisp autumn evening, a call from Aunt Margaret brought news that rippled through Alara's newfound peace. Serena's marriage to Liam had imploded. The details were sparse, but the essence was clear. The public humiliation of the wedding, coupled with Serena's pre-existing, deep-seated insecurities about her perceived perfection, had shattered their foundation. Liam, unable to reconcile Serena's increasingly brittle and demanding nature with the woman he thought he married, had left. It seems, Margaret mused, her voice tinged with a complex mix of pity and grim satisfaction, that some tides cannot be uninvited, and some foundations were never as strong as they appeared. Alara listened, a strange mix of emotions swirling within her. There was no triumphant glee, but a profound sense of poetic justice. Serena, who had always thrived on external validation and the meticulous upkeep of her flawless image, had been undone by its very public collapse. The years of emotional abuse, of Alara being rendered invisible, now had a reckoning. It wasn't the violent revenge she might have once fantasized about, but a quiet, irrefutable consequence. The yacht party hadn't just been about Alara asserting herself, it had been a catalyst, revealing the cracks in Serena's gilded cage and ultimately freeing Alara from its shadow. She hung up, looking out at the glittering Austin skyline, a silent testament to the life she had painstakingly built, brick by authentic brick. She was visible, truly seen, and finally free. Years later, Alara sat in her sun-drenched Austin office, a successful consultant now, her life a vibrant tapestry woven with purpose and genuine connection. The echo of her family's past rarely intruded, yet sometimes a whisper of old hurts would stir in the quiet moments. Then, one Tuesday morning, an email landed in her inbox, its subject line stark, from Serena. Alara's breath hitched. She hadn't seen or spoken to Serena in years, their last exchange a cold, final severing. Hesitantly, she clicked it open. The words spilled onto the screen, devoid of Serena's usual polished veneer. It was a raw, unvarnished confession. Serena wrote of the aftermath of her disastrous wedding, the public humiliation that had irrevocably shattered her marriage to Liam, and, more profoundly, her meticulously constructed world. She admitted to the deep-seated envy she'd always harbored for Alara's quiet resilience, the very trait she'd dismissed as weakness. She spoke of her own crippling insecurities, masked by a relentless pursuit of perfection and control, a need to always be the better sister, the favored daughter. The email painstakingly detailed how her cruelty had stemmed from a desperate fear of being eclipsed, of losing the attention she craved from Eleanor. And then, the words that brought a lump to Alara's throat. "I see now how truly unfair I was to you, Alara. You deserved so much more than we ever gave. Your party. It wasn't an act of spite. It was your cry to be seen, to matter. And you did. You really, truly did." It wasn't just an apology, it was an acknowledgement, a validation that Alara had unconsciously yearned for even after her triumph. A complex wave of emotions washed over Alara. There was a ghost of anger, a phantom ache from years of neglect, but beneath it, a surprising sense of peace. The anger, sharp and burning in her past, had mellowed into a quiet understanding. She didn't feel vindicated in a cruel way, but rather in a way that affirmed her own strength and worth. She saw Serena's pain, not as something to gloat over, but as a mirror reflecting the brokenness that had poisoned their family for so long. The email wasn't just Serena's truth, it was the confirmation of Alara's own reality, a reality her family had consistently denied. Alara took a deep breath, composing her reply. It was measured, empathetic, but firm. She thanked Serena for her honesty, acknowledging the difficult journey it must have taken to write such words. She didn't offer immediate forgiveness or a promise of rekindled sisterhood. Instead, she spoke of the deep wounds that had been inflicted, the long path of healing she had walked alone, and the necessity of boundaries. She wrote, perhaps, in time, there can be a new kind of connection, one built on genuine respect and understanding, not on the broken foundation of our past. But that time is not now, and the work of healing must continue, for both of us, independently. She pressed send, a lightness filling her chest that she hadn't realized was missing. The estrangement from her parents, Eleanor and her father, remained. They had never reached out, never offered an apology, choosing instead to double down on their narrative of Alara's betrayal. Alara had mourned that loss years ago, cried the tears that needed to be shed for the parents she wished she had, and eventually let go. She understood now that some relationships, no matter how deeply rooted in biology, were simply beyond repair. Their inability to acknowledge their part in her pain was not a reflection of her worth, but of their own limitations. She no longer sought their approval, their recognition. Her worth was an internal compass, guiding her. Her happiness wasn't contingent on their presence, it was a carefully cultivated garden, nurtured by authenticity, self-respect, and the genuine connections she had forged. The yacht party, that audacious, costly act of defiance, had been the crucible. It had stripped away the layers of quiet compliance and desperate yearning, revealing the formidable woman beneath. It had been more than just a party. It was a declaration of existence, a seismic shift that forced her family to see her, even if their vision was clouded by anger and resentment. For Alara, it was the moment she stopped asking for a seat at the table and built her own. She looked out her office window, the city lights beginning to twinkle in the twilight. Her life was her masterpiece, painted with strokes of courage, resilience, and unwavering self-love. She was not just visible, she was vivid. Not just free, she was sovereign. The tide she had uninvited had swept away the debris of her past, leaving a clear, expansive ocean where she could finally sail, unbounded and truly, unequivocally her own.